In the next few minutes, we're going to discuss a number of foundation mechanisms. Many of these mechanisms may not be limited to cloud computing, but they do play a key role in enabling access to cloud-based services. The standard way of accessing resources on the web is using a URL, which stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Now, the URL defines a standard syntax for essentially making a pointer or a reference to a resource that's on the internet. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transmission Protocol. It is a protocol that defines how resources, that's data, is exchanged and transmitted across the web. There are two protocols or two versions of the protocols. There is HTTPS, which stands for Secure HTTP. That's an encrypted form of the protocol. And the standard HTTP protocol, which is plain text. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is a syntax that is used to define the presentation of web pages. Browsers understand how to interpret HTML-based documents. And so when you make a request for a resource on the web, in most instances, that data is returned to the browser in HTML syntax, and the browser is then able to present that information in a way that's understood by the user or the requester of that information. Web services are services, typically business-related services, that are made available by one organization to other organizations via the web or over the internet. Now, the web service definition language is a syntax that allows the provider of the web service to define the operations, that is the functions that the web service supports, as well as the input and output messages that can be processed by the web service. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. It is a protocol that is used to facilitate the exchange of information across the web and to allow systems to interoperate. And SOAP usually relies on HTTP, that's a Hypertext Transmission Protocol, but it works with other protocols as well. So it's not just dependent on HTTP. And the SOAP messages are formatted in XML, Extensible Markup Language, and SOAP is used extensively in web services. There is another form of another protocol for invoking web services, but SOAP is one of those that's also used. And the SOAP protocol essentially defines or provides a mechanism through which web services can understand how to deal with messages that are sent from one system to the next. For example, the functions as well as the messages that can be provided as input, as well as what to expect as an output from a web service request. REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It is an architectural style that's used to enable the interaction of web services requests. It is very, very popular. And the reason it's popular is because of its simplicity. It's based on and inherits a lot of the characteristics of HTTP, that's Hypertext Transmission Protocol. UDDI stands for Universal Description, Discovery, and Integration. It is an XML-based registry that enables systems to discover web services. Now, think of it as a telephone directory. Systems can look up web services from within a UDDI directory. And once those web services are found, it then has access to the web service description information that it needs in order to invoke the web service. XML stands for Extensible Markup Language, and both XML and HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, are markup languages. So in the case of HTML, the format of that HTML document represents images and text that are to be displayed by a web server. In the case of XML, the XML document captures or represents information, data, and XML describes the vocabulary of that data that is contained within the document. The XML Schema Definition Language is a specification from the World Wide Web Consortium that defines how XML data structures are defined.